Good morning and good evening wherever you are listening to. Newport County, are they in crisis? Well, we just never know, do we? The fans seem to be pointing the blame at the owner, Hugh Jenkins. But is a brand new era dawning? They've appointed Christian Fuchs as manager after the sacking of David Hughes. There's no guarantees of what's going to happen. There's no guarantees of staying up or going down at this stage. It's still very tight in the fourth tier. However, one thing's for sure. These first few months of the season have been unforgivable in the minds of Newport County supporters. No wins at home. 11 points after 16 games. It's not good enough by anyone's standards. And that's unfortunately why David Hughes paid the price with his job. And I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't justified. I think the sacking was justified at the right time. That loss against Shrewsbury was the right moment. But I do feel sorry for David Hughes. He is a good manager. He is a good coach. I think if he came in at a different time, it would have probably worked. But I think Newport were going through pretty much a transitional period after the ownership change. And for me, I would say that Newport, with this appointment to begin with in the summer, maybe just didn't end up at the right time. Now, those of you on Twitter will know I did get the recruitment spot on pretty much. I got most of the signings correct. There were signings that I thought he would make as manager. And there were some star performances in there. But overall, the consistency just hasn't been there. The form hasn't really kicked off, which led to this sacking. Now, Christian Fuchs, he's a former Premier League winner. He's a former coach with Charlotte FC in the MLS in America. But can he make it on his own as a manager in the fourth tier? He's been in England before, but not as a manager. This is his first time as the number one in a number one job. Can he succeed in one of the most underrated football clubs in Wales? You look at the history of Newport County, you look at the previous eras, the most defining eras of that football club. Can they make it back there in the long term? Is this ownership going to take them back to where they need to be? Or is this just one disaster after another? Leave your thoughts, leave your questions, and let's get on with speaking to our guest. I've just had a DM from League of Pundits. Now, you're probably saying to yourselves, what is League of Pundits? It is literally as straightforward as picking one Premier League team to win every single match day. It is as simple as that. Make sure you create your own league with your friends and you can win some amazing prizes. However, you can also create some incredible forfeits as well. And I've got big news dropping today. I'm going to be creating the Chow Premier League right here on League of Pundits. So make sure you use the special designated code and make sure you join my league, and who knows, you could be walking away with some incredible prizes. Stay tuned, because this year could really be your year. So today we're going to be speaking to Kieran Jones on this, independent content creator and Newport County fan. Kieran, welcome to the show. First of all, just your take first on the removal of David Hughes. Was it the right time? Any ounce of remorse for him for the situation? And who is to blame for the first few months of the season?
I mean, based on kind of what your intro was, you've almost given it spot on. I think sacking Hughes was at the right time. I think he had taken those players to just about as much as he could have got out of them. I think based on little interviews that he had towards his final few weeks as manager, you could kind of tell it was going to end sooner rather than later. He looked really deflated, and it almost felt like most of his press conferences were very repetitive. The players have tried, but they've not got what they've earned. Obviously, football is a results-based game. When you're 24th, 16 games into the season, 4 points from safety, and so much of a transition period, as you mentioned, there's nothing to really argue with in terms of his departure. In terms of a blame for the start of the season, I mean, at the end of the day, new manager or not, he's got to get results. He's not gotten them, and he's definitely part to blame. But I think if you ask 99% of Newport County fans, who's the main person to blame for the lackluster season last time out and the very, very poor start going into this one, most will point the finger at Hugh Jenkins. It almost felt like there was a lot of empty promises when he originally took over the club. There was absolute pandemonium, if you will, when he took over the club. Obviously, we had such a good kind of 2 week period in that time. The Man United game, Wrexham, it almost felt like a fever dream. Pairing it with an owner who took Swansea from the fourth tier all the way up to the Premier League, how can you complain? But looking at it now, there's been a lack of transparency, a real lack of investment in the squad. You can see that David Hughes mentioned in some of his press conferences when it came to January signings that we had to comply with FFP. Given the fact that we've got probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest wage bill in the league, I don't know how we're currently struggling with FFP if it isn't just lack of investment. There's been promises of that. It's not come to fruition. And I don't know. I always want to kind of give the owner a chance because, he's done miracles with a former football club, but at the same time, it was over a decade ago. Is it overly positive? No. Is he the main person to blame? Yeah.
Interesting. So obviously, new era starts this Saturday against Oldham Athletic. Obviously, if you want to make sure you know which EFL games are going to be televised on Sky Sports Plus, you can check that out via the TV schedule. There's many different websites. But Newport County take on Oldham Athletic this upcoming weekend in League Two. The brand new manager is Christian Fuchs, the former Charlotte FC coach. This is his first job, Kieran. It's another manager with not much experience as a number one. What was your initial reaction to the news of Christian Fuchs? Because it seemed like it was coming for a while before Hughes was even sacked.
It did feel like it. Obviously, he was at one of our games. I can't quite remember. It might have been the Accrington game, but it was one of our league fixtures. He was there in the stands. There was questions about if he was going to get involved with Hughes' coaching team, and that was flat out a straight no. Obviously, there were loads of names linked to the Newport job. There were loads of people that we wanted. Steve Bruce was in there for a little while, and I think when we look at what we needed or what a majority of us think we need, it's a manager with EFL experience at the end of the day. When you've got a squad that is so imbalanced with that experience and that know-how of the Football League, especially in a dogfight, you'd like someone there who would go, right, I'm going to get the best out of what I got. Someone almost like a Michael Flynn. Obviously, I think a lot of us dreamed of that in a way, but he came out in the podcast and basically gave it a flat no, just off the concept of the club is so different now than when he was here, and obviously he doesn't want to tarnish what he is kind of seen as at Newport. But in terms of immediate reaction, from my standpoint, I'm always one to give someone a chance until there's a reason to not give them a chance.
Yeah.
Yet in the same breath, we've already tried this twice. Nelson Jardim, shocking the fact he got a full season out of the style of football and the inconsistencies within that team was bizarre. Then you had Hughes, who started off well, entirely derailed. Again, not entirely his fault, not entirely Jardim's fault. It for me, it almost felt immediately like, why would you gamble it again? This club's been in the EFL for well over a decade. Why would you gamble that with someone who's never managed? Why would you do it a third time? I can understand twice. 3 times is taking the mick a little bit. But that being said, some of the things that he mentioned, I read a little interview piece when he was at Charlotte FC. His football sounds really similar to what Hughes and what Jardim were trying to implement, almost a Man City style of football. Does it work in League Two? Not really. That being said, underwhelmed was the right term. Kind of expected was another term, but at the same time, maybe it's naivety, but I'm clinging on to a bit of hope that maybe we found a gem here. At the end of the day, every manager has to start somewhere.
Yeah, and that's the kind of positive thing with Fuchs. He's a former Premier League winner. He knows what it takes to win at the highest level of this country's football, in club football. He's someone who has been part of the coaching staff in the MLS. He's been at the high level in terms of coaching environments and coaching setups, so he knows what it takes to reach those levels. Newport has its fair share of history in terms of high levels. Is that the kind of the positive here? Because even though, 11 points from 16 games isn't acceptable by any standards, Newport County still aren't completely cut adrift from the rest of the relegation favourites at the minute in League Two. So there is that positivity of this manager could be a gem, a diamond in the rough, but also from a table perspective, Newport can still claw this back, especially with a respectable January window as well.
Yeah, I think we need a respectable January window. I think there's very obvious positions that need strengthening. We've been so frustrated up front. The rest of the team tends to kind of gel well. Maybe you argue another midfielder with Smith's kind of injury record, but you know, the like you mentioned, the positives are we're not a million miles out of getting away from this danger. And obviously, he's a well-known name, well-respected. He's weirdly played against Newport in the FA Cup a few years back. So within that, I suppose it brings a little bit of positivity. Of course, Hughes was again one of the biggest football institutes in the world, Man United. Academy side, though, is it slightly different to being almost a right-hand man to a manager in senior football? Very well could be. Jardine was at some of the most established clubs in Europe, but he was only ever a fitness coach. So he fits a lot more into hopefully transitioning into a manager. And based on kind of the way he dictated himself as a player, you'd hope he can transfer a lot of that to the way he wants to coach. Apparently, he dreams of managing in the Premier League one day. And I think the perfect start is to claw a team that is struggling, but there's quality there if you can get it out of them to push them up the table.
Mm.
That being said, I think the only reason that we're not a million miles adrift is because there's 30 games left.
Mm.
That's why the Hughes sacking probably came at the perfect time. If this happened in January, or God forbid it happened in February, could have easily seen us, 12, 13, 14 points adrift. And at that point, especially with an inexperienced coach coming in, you don't hold on to much faith. But he's got plenty of time. He's a well-established name. He's a successful footballer in his own right. Let's just hope it can transpire into a good coach, because obviously it's kind of one way or another. They either turn out to be really good. Zinedine Zidane, Pep Guardiola, good players turned into good managers. And then you've got the Wayne Rooneys of the world. Fantastic footballers, could not string a football team together for the life of them.
Obviously, finally, you've got Oldham Athletic this weekend. Obviously, it's a crucial one. Oldham are in mid-table. They want to try and, get a real consistent run of form together and try and propel themselves up the table as much as possible. How crucial will that first game be for Christian Fuchs? It's going to be very important to get off the gates as quick as possible, right?
Yeah, it's going to be important to get off the gates as quick as possible, but in the same way, I don't expect miracles. He's been appointed. We're 2 days out of this game. I'm not sat there expecting us to go out and win this game. If we can show little glimpses of what's happened over the 24, 48 hours leading up to the game, fantastic. But it would be really nice if we can snatch something. If we get a point, I'd be more than happy. Looking at it, I suppose the first game for me isn't the most important when it comes to him, because obviously he hasn't even been 24 hours yet. But going from this game, then leading into the FA Cup, then some of the following league fixtures we have, ideally we need to see a change, and we need to see it relatively quick, or in the same way that the fan base is kind of turned on the ownership, especially throughout the first third of this season. It's going to turn really toxic as well, and obviously that's not a great environment for him to be in. That being said, we've got much better away form than we do at home. I think our last home win, if you don't count the Gillingham game, was back in March. So I suppose there's that little bit of hope that maybe we can build a little bit of a away run. But that being said, if he can make Rodney Parade even half the fortress it used to be, then you're going to be more than happy.